Ah, you look tantalizing. You know, I make fun of The View a lot, but that's only because they keep talking. Because COVID also taught Sunny Hostin how to get her groceries delivered.
3 years, that's when I discovered Instacart, and I give them a big tip because they don't always pay their people well, and it's so that's been an issue, I think, for the company. But man, you can get toiletries, you can get fire logs.
Fire logs? She had to tell the audience that she tips big because even she knows she sounds insane.
The term woke has been, in my view, co-opted by the right and weaponized and bastardized. So I was surprised to hear you use the term because historically, as you know, because I think you're quite brilliant, that woke is a word used by the black community to note that we must be aware of social injustices.
But words
and so
migrate.
why is that a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing, and originally that was absolutely a great thing. Don't tell me that the left hasn't changed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm old enough to remember when it was the conservatives.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to be verbally abused on national television while maintaining the smile as Sunny host as Greg Gutfeld? And Bill Maher collaborated to deliver a takedown so vicious that even her co-host, when Gutfeld's sarcastic remarks were like a caffeine-fueled cannon, Maher's smug logic sharpened the blows, and Sunny was left blinking, as if the Wi-Fi had gone out in the middle of her tirade. Oh, it's gloriously messy.
People have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions? Yeah. Like you said, it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say in The View, because without it, she's got nothing up there. She's not very bright. So, but the problem with her is that
if I had any doubt that I was right about the change that's happened in the left, watching people protest for a terrorist organization like Hamas, that straightened me up pretty quick.
You can see the way Sunny Hostin, the way she's touching her above her eye, she can't even look at him because she's an activist, not a journalist or whatever it is that she...
Imagine deciding to be Sunny, the human incarnation of a Facebook mom group moderator, combined with a sheepish brag on LinkedIn every morning. She brings an entire antique buffet full of unsolicited moral superiority sprinkled with a generous side of "I Googled this 5 minutes ago." So I'm an expert. She is a walking masterclass in how to wield elitism like a participation trophy and still expect applause.
The View. It's become like a medical hospital that displays human misfailure. Like, it's like here, let's look at this political oddity. You know, it's like, it really is like the left-wing equivalent of a carnival sideshow, except instead of bearded ladies and fat clowns and two-headed cows. Well, let me rephrase that. But The View is a victim of the sunk cost fallacy.
Despite having completely opposed ideologies, Greg Gutfeld and Bill Maher were able to find common ground in Sunny host's bizarre safari logic. Nothing brings people together like a common adversary of reason. One is a Fox News pandemonium goblin with a smile of a raccoon in a skip, while the other is an HBOM who chains sarcasm and disillusionment like it's his aerobic start with.
Speak the truth, and when for years you've been telling lie after lie after lie, now you're carrying this big bag of rocks around you because it's too harmful for their ego to admit that we really were dishonest. And they could be honest. All they would have to say is, look, we hate Trump so much, we were willing to lie about Joe Biden because we felt he was preferable. We thought our lying and our cover-up was on your behalf. Just say that. You're still scum, but at least you're...
The flair of a PDA president running for Vice Principal Sunny has made it her art to speak in bullet points based on someone's undergrad thesis on oppression. She doesn't debate, but rather declares with the fervor of someone who believes strongly in facts, but only the ones she emotionally agrees with.
Think that's bad? The View's co-host, Sunny Hostin, says, "Hold my beer," and is literally claiming Republican women can't think for themselves.
I think that women, white women in particular, want to protect this patriarchy here because it's to their benefit. Yeah. They want to make sure that their husbands do well. They want to make sure that their sons do well. They want to make sure that their children do well. And they want to make sure that they do well. Most of the women in some of these studies are married white women, and they do fall in line with what they're...
Seeing Sunny attempt to intellectualize current events was like watching someone read Shakespeare through a kaleidoscope with every opinion filtered through a fog of personal grievance, and the distinct scent of someone who read half a New York Times headline and thought that was academic research Greg, whose entire persona is Twitter troll with a budget, just lean and raise an eyebrow and let the inconsistencies devour themselves.
Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe. Here's how she took the news. Roll it.
Wow.
Gutfeld, of course, had a field day and didn't even need to exert himself. You know it's bad when a guy who yells at clouds for fun is more coherent than your hot takes. Maher didn't roast Sunny. He dismantled her like a board like a customer tearing apart furniture out of spite. She delivered that like DoorDash overpriced and disappointing at one point. She implied that having thoughtful conversations was a form of privilege to rhetorical. Equivalent of saying rain is classist because some people own umbrellas. It's so backward. It should be moonwalking mine. Gutfeld just stood there likely wondering how someone with a law degree could weaponize victimhood. Like it was a LinkedIn endorsement. Sunny doesn't want dialogue. She wants applause breaks and trophies for slightly controversial takes in a room full of required nodding. She's that student who raises her hand every 5 minutes to share homework thoughts useless, but she thinks they're revolutionary. Gutfeld, who breathes mockery, spun that self satisfaction into gold. Sunny could say good morning and make it about capitalism ruining coffee. She speaks like she's narrating a self-help audiobook for NPR addicts who only shop at Whole Foods.
Here's a treat for you. The insufferable Sunny Hostin getting a beatdown from Bill Maher on Gaza.
We're all concerned about the innocent civilians that have been collectively punished and murdered, largely children and women, and we're all concerned about the fact that the International Criminal Court just today issued a subpoena for Bibi Netanyahu.
Well, that's ridiculous, but it's a war.
Why?
Because it's a war, and they were attacked, and they're defending themselves. Now, this is a war. Do you think Hamas needs to be destroyed? This is the question.
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
So how
Okay,
are we with a ceasefire?
All right, so Hamas needs to be destroyed because they are a terrorist organization who say openly that they want to commit genocide on the Jews.
Sunny actually believes her opinions are the intellectual cornerstone of American discourse, which makes it even funnier. Meanwhile, Gutfeld and Ma are over here playing whack-a-mole with her contradictions, using fundamental common sense as a mallet. At one point, she claimed certain demographics couldn't grasp systemic issues. Without further experience, Maher's reply was poetic, like the guy at the bar with one bourbon deep. Explaining the fall of Rome, he reminded her that personal experience is only valid to her if it doesn't contradict her worldview. Otherwise, you're just a patriarchal tool. Reality doesn't require a prerequisite course in personal pain. Her reasoning is more flexible than a yoga instructor on Adderall, leaving trails of intellectual debris behind every argument. Meanwhile, Gutfeld didn't even need faxstone, and sarcasm were enough. Sunny handed him the ammunition, confused by a man whose journalism legacy is dad jokes dipped in libertarian cynicism. She tried appealing to his morality, and Greg reacted like someone asked if he wanted fries.
Bill Maher did get to go on The View, and he said some things that offended the small minds over there. So he had a bit of a debate with the intellectual titan, Sunny Hostin. She was upset with him for using the word woke, and Bill Maher.
The most agonizing part is that Sunny didn't even realize she was being cooked. As Bill Marley carried her to school, she keeps presenting half-baked ideas as fully developed, then looks shocked when they collapse like a bad stool. It's like watching someone walk into a glass door and blame racism. The real tragedy, in a comedy of errors way, is that Sunny could have been a great lawyer, journalist, or commentator. She has a resume but chose identity over intellect. Every topic becomes a sermon. Every disagreement. Oppression. Maher's final jab was existential. How can you claim to be open-minded while canceling anyone who disagrees? Sunny had no answer. Logic doesn't reach whatever philosophical void she broadcast from her every inquiry is an attack. Watching Ma and Gutfeld dismantle her was a rare bipartisan roast of nonsense united by roles and the absurdity of someone confusing being challenged with being persecuted. Its activism by aesthetic outrage with zero solutions.
I make fun of The View a lot, but that's only because they keep talking. Those hens are always clucking. They get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, and then I get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, except on purpose. But every now and then, one of those dingbats inadvertently says something that reveals modern liberal thought so perfectly it deserves further study. You know, like a weird serpent that washed up on the beach and you want to...
While Sonny battles every perceived microaggression Maher, and Gutfeld sit metaphorical T wondering how someone can say so much yet say so little. She speaks with the confidence of someone who's never been corrected. In a group chatter voice of force field against self-awareness, every disagreement lands with the weight of a Supreme Court ruling, as if being corrected were a constitutional crisis or tone is the auditory equivalent of a prize honking and passive aggression, rising like a crescendo of condescension, as if each statement came approved by smugness consultants. Gutfeld doesn't even argue. He pokes smirks and lets her contradictions unravel like an old cable knit jumper. He's a guy at the back shouting the emperor, has no clothes, not for fun, but because someone has to. Meanwhile, Sonny plays the self-appointed moral compass of a country that never asked for it, stitching outfits of outrage out of anecdotes. Every argument turns into a TED lecture, every disagreement into a moral crisis, as she bounces opposing ideas like a club bouncer, turning away anyone in sensible shoes.
All of them, actually, that montage we showed, their absurdity strengthens the Republicans at this point. Because Republicans are like, oh yeah, you've been saying that about us. And I think ever since I got into politics, since 1995, as I recall, Democrats have been saying this about Republican women. They just never change. It's not, talk about not fresh. They got nothing else. And so they don't want to defend our policies. What they try to do is to make the other team more tolerant.
She wants understanding, but refuses to provide it. She preaches tolerance, as if it were a one-way street with her name on it. And the one constant in her speech is the incessant hum of double standards, playing the tiniest violin in the world. All of Sonny's talking points had neon kick Emmy signs pinned to them referencing systemic unfairness. Greg Gutfeld might as well have been reading questions from the audience at the end of the day. People don't applaud someone who confuses volume with value or certainty with correctness. So when Greg asked how that explains her salary, she said that she was the voice of the unheard Maher, and Gutfeld weren't even trying to destroy her. They were trying to save the conversation from the burning wreckage of her logic before it took the rest of the panel down with it. Of course, Sonny didn't notice, but she never does. She stood there with her arms crossed in rhetorical defiance, waiting for the applause that never materialized.
I want us to say to Sonny Hostin that you can call it whatever you want, but we're talking about the radical left. It is amazing how they then just attempt to redirect.
Ironically, Sonny still thinks she won that argument, leaving with the conviction that she stood up for justice, truth, and whatever buzzword was trending on Twitter. Meanwhile, Gutfeld left with a sneer, and Maher probably lit a cigar with one of her cue cards in the history of daytime TV disasters. Sonny added another chapter to her slow decline into View's most unintentionally hilarious feature. Nothing beats nonsense delivered with the confidence of Socrates. There's something poetic about someone making indignation a morning routine. This belongs somewhere between Dr. Oz's Senate run and Connie's marriage advice, of flaming mess of ego echo chambers and empty applause instead of true dialogue. Sonny performs a one-woman Broadway show of grievances where every look feels like a subpoena. She's not discussing issues. She's delivering tightly wrapped speeches that could floss the Statue of Liberty, turning basic comments into campaigns against imaginary oppressors.
Virtue signals on the toilet. But that's not the point here. While everybody else was trying to figure out how to survive as the government told us that breathing in public could kill us, Sonny was lolling around in her big house clicking on pictures of arugula while mixing Cocoa Puffs.
It's not so much a debate as it is a one-sided soliloquy colliding with a cannon of sarcasm, while Mark casually dismantles her arguments like he's pulling loose threads from a jumper. Sonny stands firm in her house of straw, mistaking its flimsiness for flexibility. Gutfeld doesn't even try to outsmart her. He simply holds up a mirror and lets her trip over her own reflection. Sonny's end is burdened with recycled buzzwords and fake outrage, while the other side floats calmly, sipping irony through a paper straw, convinced she's winning, unaware that the scoreboard was unplugged ages ago. This isn't ideological warfare. It's rhetorical slapstick. Imagine an intellectual seesaw.